As inequality has risen around the world, and now it is important to design tax systems that will achieve equity objectives. This has become increasingly widely discussed and is the focus of many recent public finance research. At the same time, globalization and the increasing international mobility of capital have brought international and jurisdictional issues in tax policy to the fore for many countries and for the international community more generally. Today on our segment, Tax in Africa, brought to you in partnership with the West Africa Tax Administration Forum WATAF, we'll be talking about global perspectives for enhancing tax equity in Africa. To help us unpack this, I am joined by Chika Okoh, Senior Program Officer, International Budget Partnership. Thank you, Chika, for joining me today. If you can hear me, Chika.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure. Right. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, I can hear you too. Now, let's look at this. Equitable taxation.
Good.
Great. Equitable taxation can mean different things. Now, what is key in determining what more equitable taxation looks like in practice?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I want to start by saying that for us to really understand what equitable taxation looks like in practice, I think we should flip the coin and look at it from the other side. Let's look at what equitable taxation or inequitable taxation is not. When the poor, the people that are burdened, that earn the lowest, are burdened with payments, such that they end up paying a larger share of their income in taxes, such a system is considered to be inequitable. Also, an inequitable tax system is such that creates opportunities for the rich, the wealthy, to pay very little share of their income in taxes. And, in such a system, you have loopholes that the rich can exploit. They're able to avoid or evade taxes. So we consider such a system to be inequitable. And another pointer is the kind of attention that government pays to revenue generation. What exactly is their focus? Usually, government's focus is more about how much is generated and less about, the process of the revenue generation and how that process can have different kind of impact on different people. That is another criteria for considering whether a system is equitable or not. And another thing is, in a tax system, how does it treat taxpayers? Do we have differential treatments for different kinds of taxpayers? For instance, we have tax waivers, incentives, exemptions granted to foreign companies, but not domestic companies. So in such an instance, you have taxpayers who fall within the same tax bracket being given different kinds of treatments. That calls into question inequity question again. And then
Chika, let me come in here. I think you've sort of tried to explain, what that really means. But from your work on, strengthening taxation in Africa project, are there lessons or insights that can be applied globally in the pursuit of tax equity?
Yes, of course. There are lots of lessons that we have learned in the process of implementing the tax project in Africa. And one of those key lessons is that we have learned that civil society, civic actors can actually play important roles in tax processes. But there is limited recognition of, the role that they can play. So we have examples where civic actors, for instance, in Senegal, they were able to work with government, bridge that gap between taxpayers and tax authorities, and they'll be able to increase compliance in that particular location. So we see that civic actors can play very critical roles in the tax process, creating trust, bridging gap, being linkages, contributing to research, and generally making the system to be more equitable. So that is one lesson that we have learned. But there is really limited understanding and recognition of the roles that civic actors can play. We have also learned that there needs to be deliberate inclusion of civic actors, in tax processes. The governments need to create and strengthen spaces for inclusion of civic actors in tax processes, whether it is in lawmaking, in tax policy making, in tax administration. If that deliberate inclusion is not done, that is going to be a challenge. Then another thing we have learned is that across Africa, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa, there is the thinking that because the tax codes, tax system, the tax policies, they are neutral. There is the thinking that they don't really have an impact on taxpayers. So the neutrality of the tax laws or codes does not mean that people are not being affected by its implementation. There's what we call implicit bias in tax system. So implicit bias means that taxpayers, men and women, due to their different circumstances in the society, their economic situation and so on and so forth, are affected by tax codes, tax practices. And so the fact that government doesn't pay attention to that is a key learning.
Thank you. I would like us to wrap up with this. Looking ahead in less than 30 seconds, what do you see as the key priorities or areas of focus for achieving greater transparency and equity in taxation, especially when we look at the African context? In 30 seconds. If you can hear me, Chika, I'd like you to respond to that.
Yeah, okay. So I want to say that, yes, I can. I can hear you. I can hear you, yes. So I would like to say that very quickly, there is a need to restructure our tax system such that individuals with more income and wealth pay greater share of taxes. Government in sub-Saharan Africa needs to pay attention to that. Then informal economy is very critical in Africa, and that is where we have most people employed. But how that system is taxed is shrouded in, should I say, mystery, is very complex. There is need to pay attention to addressing inequalities within that particular sector. Then we have incentives and tax expenditures that are not really being governed appropriately, and there is need to pay attention to that. Also, increasing civic actors' participation. These are critical measures that need to be taken.
All right. Thank you so much. Chika Okoh, Senior Program Officer, International Budget Partnership. Thank you for your time.